morning, everyone. I am so excited to introduce a person who I've known for about 10 years. He's a wonderful person. He's a father. He's a husband. He is the County Extension 4-H Director here in Knoxville County. His education came from Mississippi State University. Yay, go Dogs, where I graduated. He's an all-around person. He does everything. I guess you could say he's a jack of all trades. He diddle-daddle in cows, fishing, farming. So whatever you need, Mr. Coleman got it, or if he doesn't have it, he'll find it. So let me introduce you all to Mr. Crayton V. Coleman, MSU Extension 4-H Director.
Good morning, everyone. All right, it's going to allow me to share my screen.
Good morning. Yes, it should allow you to share now.
Okay. Today, I want to talk to you about gardening in containers through the seasons. And this PowerPoint was prepared by myself and a good friend of mine, Christian Stevenson, who also works for Mississippi State University. Why grow in containers? Container gardens are great for small or multi-use areas. Problems with soil-borne diseases or nematodes can be avoided when you're using container gardens. Poor soil conditions can be easily overcome by switching to a container garden. And ready access to containers makes pest management easier. And produce from the plants will often be easier to reach in containers because they won't be so low to the ground. So that's some of the reasons we want to grow our vegetables in containers. Choosing containers. Almost any type of container can be used. The size of the container will vary according to the plant selection and the space you have available. For most vegetable crops, such as tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, you will find that 5-gallon containers are the most suitable size, while 1 to 2 gallon containers.
I sent you another link.
Okay, I'm gonna try to
I'm sorry, Craig, but we can't see your screen. Did you want to try the share
Yeah, it's
screen
another email they
again?
sent.
You can't see my screen?
No.
All right, I'm doing screen share. Let me try it again. Can you guys see anything now?
We hear you, but we still don't see your screen.
Okay. Let me go back and try again. I'm gonna go to share screen. All right, what about now?
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect. Thank you.
okay. All right, so you guys still with me? You can see it right now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Smaller container sizes are appropriate for herbs, lettuce, and radish crops. Container size for vegetables. Depending upon what vegetable you want to plant, I have listed appropriate container size. For broccoli, a 2-gallon container will work for 1 plant. For cucumbers, you need a 5-gallon container. Eggplant, you need a 5-gallon container. And for peppers, squash, and tomatoes, also, I would recommend a 5-gallon container. And here I have a picture of some various containers that you can use. Your larger terracotta pots, your recycled pots that we use here in Knoxville County, and then another ceramic type, plastic type pot as well. Your containers, you need to make sure that your containers have a drainage hole. I got a call from 2 grandparents this summer. We're doing the container garden program. They said, Mr. Coleman, all our plants died. I said, well, did you drill a hole in the bottom of it? They said, no, Mr. Coleman, I didn't. I said, all plants need water and sunlight, but they also need a way for the water to drain out. So I went by and took my drill with me and drilled some holes in the containers, and we replanted. And that was a learning lesson for that family, that you need to have drainage holes in your containers. Also, the desired plant needs to match the container. So you want to have if you have a larger plant, like a tomato, you want to have a larger container that can hold at least 5 gallons of soil. And your containers need to complement your surrounding decor or architecture. Here in Knoxville County, we don't worry about that too much. We just use whatever we have in our backyard. or whatever our neighbors give us, as long as it's a good container. There are various types of containers you can use and recycle. You can use pots, waste baskets, aquariums, wash tubs, bowls, urns, tubs, barrels, baskets, and even an old pair of work boots if you want to. And also, I've seen people use cement blocks as well. There's various things you can use for containers. Some things you need to consider. For a wooden garden box, use rot-resistant wood for the containers. On your terracotta pots, they are porous and can leach water. So one little trick you can do is spray the inside of your pot with paint. That way the water won't leak out as easily. And plastic pots are less expensive and lighter. So you just want to consider using different pots based upon what your situation may be. Here is some picture of some repurposed pots that people have used, your 5-gallon bucket, some recycled boxes, and then even your tomato vegetable containers like that, peas, carrots, those containers like that, or a coffee container can be used for smaller plants as well. You can even use a grocery store bag. At our school here, I work with our VOTEC instructor, and we did a little grab and go bag for our kids this year. And they actually grew their fruits and vegetables in a small bag like that with potting soil. And also you can use recycled water bottles to do small plants, herbs, salad type plants as well. Drainage. Drainage is the main issue when it comes to growing container plants. Regardless of the type of size of container you use, it must drain adequately for you to be successful. Adding about 1 inch of coarse gravel in the bottom of the container will help improve drainage. Drain holes work best when they are located along the side of the container, about 1/4 to a ½ inch from the bottom. And container materials are either porous or non-porous. Porous pots will also lose water through the sides, but you want to make sure you have adequate drainage for your containers. That's the most important thing I want you to pick up on. Here's a picture of something new that people are using in Mississippi called sub-irrigated containers. The sub-irrigated containers are good options for patios and balconies because there's less water overflow than in traditional containers. One of the main issues with sub-irrigated containers is they may become heavy. These containers can weigh in excess of 60 pounds when they're full of water. But the good thing about it is you pour your water in down at the bottom here where you see the opening net. That's called a sub-irrigated container. Soil media for container, you can use regular potting soil that you buy at Walmart, your local co-op or anything like that. And also you can use some synthetic soil mixes as well. But around here, I just use regular good potting soil that's produced locally here in Knoxville County. We have a contributor here that donated some potting soil to our 4-H program last year. And so we buy their materials. So we try to shop at home first and do business local. Watering. Proper watering is essential for a successful container garden. One container watering once a day is usually adequate, but sometimes when it's 90 degrees like it is now in Mississippi, you might want to water twice a day. Again, poor drainage or overwatering will harm plants. You want to avoid wetting the foliage of plants since wet leaves will encourage plant disease. So when you're watering your plants, you want to water from the bottom. You don't want to take a water hose and spray over the top. You want to water from the bottom so the plants don't get too wet, the leaves don't get too wet, and therefore start disease problems. And you can even use these water hydrogels, but you want to make sure you mix them in the soil really well before you put your plants there. And also you can mulch the top of your plants. That'll help conserve a little bit of water as well. There are different ways you can fertilize your container plants. You can use Osmocote, which is in the top corner. They are time release fertilizer. It releases a little bit every week. Or you can use your traditional liquid plant food here that you mix in a container to water your plants. And I recommend feeding your plants with fertilizer once a week. Plants should be fertilized with the nutrient solution weekly. As I said before, if you use transplants, begin watering with the nutrients solution the day you set them out. So as soon as you transplant, that's when you want to start watering them. For plants started from seed, only use the nutrient solution once the seed has emerged. It is a good idea to occasionally water with a nutrient solution containing minor elements such as boron and other trace elements and such. Sunlight. Sunlight is major for plants. They gotta have sunlight in order to survive. One major advantage to gardening in containers is that you can place the plants in areas where they can receive the best possible growing conditions. Most vegetables need 6 to 8 hours of sunlight in order for you to be successful growing them. So make sure you plant them, so move your pots and put them in an area that gets at least 6 hours of sunlight daily. Troubleshooting common problems. Last year we had 50 kids to do their container gardens, and these are some of the various problems that we encountered and that you may encounter with your container garden. Your plants are tall and spindly, like this plant here. It's real long and leggy. When you see that, that's a sign of insufficient light. So you want to move your container to an area that has more sunlight when you see that. Your plants are yellowing from the bottom. If you have tomato plants and other plants that are yellowing from the bottom, that means you have too much water. So reduce your watering frequency. And you also want to check for good drainage, but anytime you see where your plants are yellowing from the bottom, that's a sign that it has too much water. The marginal necrosis of the leaves, that's the outer layer of the leaves here, this white area, that means you have salt levels, your salt levels are too high. That really means you have too much fertilizer that you've been using. So if you ever run into a situation like that, you just want to use regular water to kind of run through your plants to get rid of that excess fertilizer and nutrients that you have built up. Anytime you see plants that have the purple leaf, that means that they're being stunted and they're sick. Usually that's a sign of low temperatures. I get a lot of phone calls in the spring and April with homeowners saying, my vegetables are turning purple. What's going on? And it's gonna be cold damage. That's usually what it's gonna be when you see signs of purple like that. Here are some helpful tips for you to be successful with your container garden. Potting soil weighs a lot and it costs a lot. So around here, we try to do some filler in the bottom of our containers. You can use pine cones, water bottles, or even peanut egg shells like that. And so that will help reduce the amount of potting soil you need in each container. So just use some filler to help fill your pots up as you go. You want to protect your plants from cold temperatures. You can wrap them up with plastic and tape, or you can move them into an area if it's gonna get too cold and they can incur cold damage. One of the problems we had last year with some of our tomato plants was keeping them upright. The kids would call us, Mr. Coleman, my tomato plants keep falling over. And so we would have to stick something down the middle of the container to keep it sturdy in the ground, or set it in the area in between two other bigger pots like that. So you wanna make sure you keep your pots upright so you can be successful when you're growing in containers. Cleaning up. You wanna clean your used containers before you plant in them. A 10% bleach solution kills most of the things that would be dangerous for your plants. If you're allergic to bleach, you can use a 10% vinegar solution to clean your pots before you plant them. You want to raise your pots up off the ground. You see in the picture here to the right, we planted those container pots on top of pallets. That way you have better airflow and better drainage like that. So you want to raise your containers up off the ground if you can, so you have better drainage. Some people want to have an herb garden, so you can go right outside your kitchen window and get you some herbs to help season your meats. Some herbs that grow well in herb gardens include mint, sage, thyme, rosemary, basil, parsley, oregano, and catnip. Those are some good herbs that you can have in a small herb garden, and it doesn't take up much space either. You just use a small bowl and grow your own very own herb garden. What vegetables can be grown in containers? Almost any vegetable that would grow in a typical backyard garden will also do well as a container grown plant. Vegetables that are ideally suited for growing in containers include tomatoes, lettuce, peppers, squash, eggplant, green onions, radishes, and turnips. All those can be grown in your container garden. other vegetables for containers. Whole beans and cucumbers also do well in containers. More space is needed for these because they grow in a vine, on a vine. So you want to use we use these tomato cages here and just turn them upside down so the vines can grow up on the tomato cages. All you gotta do is just reverse your tomato cages, and that works well for your vine type plants like pole beans, cucumbers. And here are your vegetable varieties that do well in containers. I'm gonna go down to tomatoes. A lot of people like to plant tomatoes in containers. Patio, Pixie, Tiny Tim, and Tumbling Tom are some good varieties for tomatoes if you want to plant them in a container. But here's a complete list of those that, depending upon what type of plants you want to plant, some varieties that would do well in your area. We talked about gardening through the seasons. I just want to give y'all some general rules of thumb that we use here in Mississippi. Our April 15th is when we plant our summer gardens. So you want to plant your tomatoes, peppers, squash, cucumbers, okra, and et cetera. A good general rule of thumb is after April 15th. September 1st is when you want to plant your fall gardens here in Mississippi. Some crops you can use for your fall garden include bush, snap beans, beets, cabbage, cauliflower, lettuce, mustard, radishes, spinach, and turnips. Any of those type of leafy plants like that will do well in your fall garden. And then here in Mississippi, a good date to start your spring garden is March 1st. So we can go from March 1st to September to April 15th. That gives us about 6 weeks to have a little bit of a spring garden. And that should be enough to grow your spinach, rutabagas, radishes again. Those same crops that we did in the fall, we can replant a whole new crop of those on March 1st. And that kind of gives us an idea of going year round in our container garden. So April 15th for a summer garden, September 1st for a fall garden, and March 1st are some good dates, generally speaking, for a spring garden. Watering, we talked about watering before. Plants in container need more water than those that are planted in the ground. Underwater is a major problem in summer. Just like I said, right now, temperatures are around 90 degrees here in Mississippi. So I water my plants first thing in the morning and then again in the afternoon. So I water them twice a day right now. And the best time to water your plants is in the morning because it allows the leaves and soil surface time to dry. So water your plants in the morning. If you can only water them once a day, it's the best time to do it is early in the morning. And here's some rules for creative container gardens. It's your garden. Grow what you want and what you want. So you see we have pictures of here of growing stuff in boots. Here's the pallets that have been refurbished and recycled. And here's an older container that someone recycled to plant pansies in. I want to give y'all some highlights of our Knoxville County Virtual 4-H Garden Club that we started last year during the pandemic. We had 50 4-H youth that participated in the program. We had 6 4-H adult volunteers that participated as well and helped our youth out. The community donated potting soil. I told you earlier we had a place here that bags potting soils and ships it all over the whole United States and even to China. So they gave us a good, they donated our potting soil. Our local co-op and farm supply store donated our plants, and our cattle farmers. I work with our cattle producers here in Knoxville County, and I asked them would they donate their recycled feed tubs. So they donated them free of charge. And then Walmart let us buy some tomato cages at a discounted price because I told them I was working with our youth here in Knoxville County. In this picture here, you'll see a picture of my coworker, Ms. Josephine Tate, and a picture of myself. And this is the material, these are the materials that we gave out to our 4-Hers to help them get started with their very own container garden. The youth and the family send in pictures to us to update it. And when they send in the pictures, we put their name and their first name and their pictures on Facebook. And that created a lot of excitement here in our community. Every day people were checking in to see if their neighbors, if their kids or grandkids were on our Facebook page. So here's some of our younger 4-H members that started and sending in pictures when their crops were first planted. And every picture that they sent in that was appropriate, we put it on our Facebook page to let them know we appreciate what they were doing and wanted to give them some good publicity. Here's some of our older 4-Hers that did the container garden project as well. Here's a young lady by the name of Layla to the left. She was excited to be growing her very own container garden. Her brother is 10 years of age, and she was actually too young for us at first to start the program. But I said, if she wants to do it, we're going to do it. There's no age limit to having fun. So we did this project for kids of all ages. So Layla started her own garden, and she actually grew some better vegetables than her brother did. So she was excited. She was excited about that. And so there's no age limit to gardening and having fun. You can start them as young as age 2 or 3 if you want to. We have 2 brothers over here in the next picture that grew their own garden. They had a little bit of a competition going on as well. On this slide here, I have 3 pictures that I wanted to show you. The first one is a young lady. Her name is Shamarik, and Shamarik planted her garden, and she's been watering it and taking care of it. And then that's a picture of Shamarik in her garden as it matured. And another good thing about gardening, our gardening program, was that a lot of our kids had never gardened before, and their parents had never gardened. So they had to ask their grandparents for help on gardening. So this was an intergenerational thing. So this is our Shamarik here. Shamarik is here with her grandfather, Mr. Cleo. So Mr. Cleo taught her how to take care of her garden like that. And then the last picture to the right is her harvesting some of her crops that she grew. So the first picture is when Shamarik first planted her garden and was nurturing it. The second picture is of her and her grandfather in there taking a picture of her garden together. And the last picture is a picture of her harvesting some of the crops from her container garden. This is another one of our 4-H's, Tequila. Tequila was happy to be doing the garden project. And you'll see that Tequila's almost 6 feet tall. And I want to show a picture of her behind her container garden. That's how tall some of her plants got to be, 6 feet tall. So if you water them, fertilize them, and take care of them and put them in the proper sunlight in a good growing area, those plants can really grow and get to be 6 feet tall as Tequila is in this picture. Here's another picture of DeMariana and the Javius over to the left with their red container gardens. And then over to the right is a picture of the Coleman family. Jace, he has 4 sisters that were doing a container garden project. And he said he wanted to do it as well. So I had to go get some more containers, some more plants. And we had Jace had his own container garden as well. You see that big smile on his face and the big smile of his family as well. This family did the container garden last year, and this year they're actually selling their own produce that they're growing, and then that their dad is going over to buy from another farmer. They have their own produce stand that they sell on Fridays and Saturdays here in Knoxville County now. So this family learned some good entrepreneurship skills, and they said, we're gonna start our own business. We see a need for that here in Knoxville County. I have another picture of Jemiah here with her container garden. In that one container, she has tomato plants, cucumbers, and squash, all growing in that one container. So I think you can plant three plants easily in that container garden, in your big container garden like that. Here's a picture of Dixie with her squash that she harvested. And these 2 brothers are putting pink flagging up on their tomato plants and squash. They were having problems with birds. So they used the pink flags that blow in the wind to try to distract and scare the birds away from their garden. And this is one of our older 4-H'ers, senior 4-H'ers, Reagan. She just graduated. Those are pictures of her squash crop that she grew, and she did a great job. And some of our 4-H'ers even got a chance to take their local produce to the farmer's market and get a chance to sell it. We have a picture of Bruce in the top left corner. He's getting his money for selling his produce at the farmer's market. To the right, we have a picture of Reagan with her squash. And then at the bottom, we have a picture of Jaquarius selling his produce as well at the local farmer's market here in Knoxville County. We could not have done our container garden program without our great volunteers. You see Mr. Mickens, Landis Mickens here, and Ms. Catherine Mickens, who serve as 4-H volunteers here in Knoxville County. They did a great job helping us out with this project this year. And last year, we couldn't have done it without them. Here's a gentleman that saw what we were putting on Facebook with everyone else. He said, Mr. Coleman, I want my picture on Facebook as well. He grew a giant zucchini that was about 3 feet long. So he wanted to get in on the action as well. And then there's again, another picture of Jace, the Coleman family as well. And last but not least, I have a picture of my son, CJ. CJ has cerebral palsy. He's in a wheelchair, but he did our 4-H container garden project as well. He enjoyed it, had a lot of fun. And I know you see the big smile on his face. And that was the type of smile that most of our 4-Hers had when they did the container garden project. All of my information came from our Mississippi State website and also from a publication we have called the Garden Tabloid that's on our website as well. But that's just a quick synopsis of our 4-H container garden program that we did here in Knoxville County. Are there any questions?
And you feel free to unmute yourselves to ask questions, or you can put your questions in the chat box.
Mr. Crayton, this is Catherine Mickens. Next time you remove that picture of me with that bad hair day.
I have a question. What zone are you in?
We're down here in Zone 7B in Mississippi, and even your zones are separated by where you are in your county. So I would encourage you to get your local map and see what zone you're located in. And Mississippi has 3 very distinctive zones here. We have North Mississippi, Central Mississippi, and South Mississippi. And Knoxville County is right on the edge of Central and North Mississippi. So we have to look at that, but I would encourage you to look at your, go to your local extension website and find out what zone and what crops grow best in your area like that. But I wanted to share it with you, the crops that grow best here in Mississippi. You know.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about tomato bags.
Okay.
I'm talking about the kind that sit on the ground. You know, they almost look like they're made out of tarp material, and then they have handles on them, and you're supposed to be able to use them. I just bought them this year to try them because I have problems with enough light in certain spots and thought that'd be a good way to try to stick my tomatoes where I could get more light. That material that they're made out of, is that supposed to hold all water, or is it supposed to, does moisture diffuse through that, or what? I'm just curious.
Yes, ma'am. Your water still goes through the bags like that and everything. So what you're using is just another form of growing media. Like I talked about earlier, we're using potting soil, but you can use any type of growing media to grow your crops. And that's just another way of doing it. And I want to recommend, if you're using those type bags, I like getting them up off the ground because I'm getting older now, and I don't like stooping down so low. So you could actually use a 5-gallon bucket and sit that bag on top of it. And that way you want to stoop down so low, and that'll be a kind of a form of doing no, quote unquote, no stoop gardening. So you don't have to stoop down so low.
Right,
and also it gives you a chance for your water to drain from those bags a lot easier by having them up in the air suspended like that.
Well, I wondered about that because I used, I mean, these are just bags and you fill them up with your medium.
Yes, ma'am.
And I used Miracle Grow potting mix.
Yes, ma'am.
Not soil, but mix.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
And I did put some gravel on the bottom of the bags.
Good.
And then I stuck them up on top of flat rocks. So, but I did not poke holes in the bottom of them. And that was the one thing that I wondered about. It didn't say to do that. And I wondered, so you shouldn't have to poke holes in that kind of a bag?
If it's a cloth material, the water will run out. But
well, it's kind of like a tarp.
Tarp, yes, yeah, with the tarp, it'll run out because water can go through there. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I don't seem to be having issues, and my tomatoes are doing great, better than I could ever grow them, in my raised beds. That's get a lot of sun. So
yes, ma'am. That means that the water is going through there, it's permeating through the bag. So you're doing the right thing. But if you ever have a problem where they're not doing well, you might want to lift them up off the ground because that means it's not getting good airflow and good irrigation drainage per se.
Okay.
But as long as they're doing good, keep up the good work like that, and you'll be able to recycle and reuse those bags again.
Yes, that was one of the reasons I thought I'd try them too, and then they can be moved wherever. So thank you.
That's a good thing about using container garden. You can kind of move them. If you have company coming over, you can move them to another area to give you more patio space and things like that. So that's one of the good advantages of having a container garden. You can move them around when you need to, and move them to better growing conditions, sunlight and all. But a good rule of thumb on sunlight is 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. Yes, ma'am.
And I have another question. I like your idea about putting pine cones in there to fill up the pots.
Yes.
But does that make will the pine cones leach as acidic? Will it make the dirt acidic for too much so for my plants?
Okay, what I like to do is I put the pine cones in the bottom of my container, and then I use that fabric that she just talked about. You can use garden fabric or newspapers, and that way I create a barrier per se between my pine cones and my growing media, my potting soil or whatever my growing media is. So I always use newspapers or something like that to give you a barrier per se. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's really helpful because we have a lot of pine cones here and I never thought of using it.
Yes, ma'am. And just use something like that to give you a barrier, and that way your water's still gonna leach down through the bottom of the bag, and your topsoil, your potting soil is not coming in contact with the pine cone material.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for this. This was really nice.
Thank you for asking questions. We had a great time doing it, and I'm glad that they gave us the opportunity to share what we've been doing here in Knoxville County. Our 4-H's had a great time. We've gotten United Way has donated money to our county for the first time ever. They saw the PowerPoint presentation of what we did with our kids, and they said we want to be involved with that. It's a good thing. They saw the intergenerational relationships between the kids and parents and grandparents, and they said we want to be involved with that type of activities going on. Any other questions?
I do. I always have questions. I have a few of those grow boxes that you call the
Sub-irrigated one. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes. And they're interesting. And this is the second year I've used them with varying degrees of success, depending on what I plant in them. But they mentioned that, you know, because you got to fill those suckers up with potting mix.
Yes, ma'am.
And of course it comes with that you could change yearly, a fertilizer pad that you put on the top and so on and so forth.
Yes, ma'am.
But they mentioned that you can use that same potting mix that you put in there for a number of years.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I guess because you're re-fertilizing with the strip. And so given that fact, like if you're using a tomato bag, I'm going back to my tomato bags now, but I'm thinking of other containers because I do plant a lot in containers.
Okay.
So from year to year, how long can you use that if you're using potting mix? Okay. From year to year, how long can you use that?
You can keep on using it because if you're using like a liquid fertilizer like Miracle Grow that you mentioned earlier, you're still putting nutrients back into the soil every time, you know, once a week like that and everything. So, and over time, your soil level will drop. If it drops, just add some more soil, some more soil to it, and just mix it all together. Is what I like to do. You know, put my new with the old and mix it all together.
Yes.
Just keep it back up to that level that you had before. So you can keep using it over and over again. The only way I would not, if you have a real bad disease problem, that may be the only time that I wouldn't reuse it like that and everything.
Okay.
But from year to year, you should be able to recycle it because we're continuously adding nutrients by using Miracle Grow or Osmocote, whatever fertilizer we're using. Yes, ma'am.
And would the same thing apply then to a raised bed?
Yes, ma'am. The same way.
Okay.
And you just keep filling it, you know, just keep filling it up to the level that it was before and turning it over, mixing it all together. And you should be able to use it for a while.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And
thank you.
Another good thing on your raised beds, make sure you use like on the bottom of it, use a newspaper or a landscape fabric like that, so grass doesn't grow through your flower bed as easily. So you want to put something at the bottom of your flower bed, any type of raised bed like that, to provide a barrier for grass, you know, to come through. So it gives you a kind of a head start on your planting.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Loretta Young has a question. She has her hand raised.
Okay.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I off mute?
I can hear you.
Thank you for your presentation. I am terrible at gardening and growing plants. I heard you talk about if you see the leaves from the bottom are yellow, it indicates something. Mine are usually brown at the tips? What?
All right. Again, like I said, if it's your disease is moving up from the bottom, if it's yellow like that, it's going to be most likely overwatering. And anytime that we overwater, our plants become weak and they're more susceptible to diseases. So I just use a pair of scissors. And if I see something that's brown, I go around and cut it off at that point there, because usually the disease moves up from the bottom of your plant up to the top. And another good thing to do, like in this picture here that CJ has, I should have helped him prune the bottom of it, that plant there. So you can see that potting soil in the bottom. I want it to be a clear area between where my green material is and the potting soil. That way it doesn't give it the disease an area to move up on my leaf material like that. So like I said, all diseases move up from the bottom. So you can buy yourself some time by just clipping those brown or diseased areas that you see, and using a good general fungicide. And I didn't mention using the insecticide because
Thank you. I have another question.
I like to use a good general fungicide or a good general insecticide. And if you don't want to use chemicals, quote unquote, insecticidal soap is a good deterrent for insects like that. So if you're doing an organic thing, use insecticidal soap. If you're like me, then get you some good insecticides that work well that's labeled for vegetables.
I have another observation. You know, in Greenberg County, we have community gardens. And when I was growing up in West Virginia, there were a lot of people who had large gardens. And now it seems like that's like a lost art. But recently, when I looked at the community presentation, they had purchased kind of like aluminum containers that were oblong, a little good bit bigger presentation, but light enough and small enough that you could put in a backyard. And when I asked about where they purchased those, they said Lowe's, and the cost was like around 60 to 90, ranged from 60 to 90 dollars. And they were saying that these are higher gardening instruments, so that as you get older and your back doesn't move as easily as it once did, that this is the thing to do. So we're having a block party in an African American community, and I'd like to see, we've asked that gardener to bring some plants and some of those
Yes, ma'am.
containers and display how, you know, you can do it without tearing up your entire back garden.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
really could do it in a very, you know, and I want to say comfortable, but doable, you know, setting.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And that's what I like about container gardens. We're a rural area here in Knoxville County, Mississippi, but a lot of our kids had never gardened before, and their parents didn't have the equipment to break up a full garden. So that's why we use the container garden to do that. And another way, we talked about no stoop gardening, where as we get older, you don't want it to bend over as much. So you can use concrete blocks as a base, as a foundation. You can use bales of hay and things like that, and set your containers on top of those to do quote unquote no stoop gardening and everything as well.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent discussion. Any other questions? Mr. Coleman, any other questions? You can unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can put it in the chat box. Okay, just by like a show of hands or a reaction, how many people are thinking about replicating a community garden program in their community? Is this something that you think you might want to do in your community? Show of hands or reaction? Okay. Got a couple hands. Miss Maddie. Okay. Okay. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we're going to stay on just a couple more minutes. For anyone else who has any questions, you can type your question into the chat box or ask your question. And we're always looking for different topics to bring to you on our virtual office hours. Today's topic was on container gardening, but if you have a specialty or you are a content expert in a particular subject and you want to be a guest speaker on our virtual office hours, just let us know. And we will certainly schedule you to be a presenter so we can share the knowledge that you have and share the information so people can replicate the programs in their community.
Regina,
Yeah,
don't forget to let Mr. Crayton know that this video will be available on YouTube.
YouTube, yes.
And he can let his co-workers or anybody else who would like to view this video, and you can send him the link.
Okay, and I'll actually send the link out to everybody, either I or Sheila. We do have a YouTube channel, it's Appalachian Diabetes Network, and you can post that on your Facebook page or put it in your e-newsletter. You can share that with whoever you want. Thank you for the
Mr.
reminder,
Crayton, I would-
Catherine. Ms.
Regina?
Loretta, I think you broke up a little bit. Can you repeat that?
Well, I wanted to share with the speaker today that I would like to share something with him. We had a community pool that was had been around for years, and it got to the point where we couldn't find enough lifeguards, and we didn't have the funds in the city to maintain the upkeep of the pool, and that has turned into a community garden. I'd love to send you, if I can have your address, I'd like to send you a picture of the gardens that have come out of that kind of a setting. And I thought it was kind of creative in terms of using something that, for good, that had really been a lost art, and financially for the community was a hardship. But it's very interesting to see the kind of plants that they're growing there now.
Put my email address in.
Mr. Coleman, did you want to share your email address, or would you like Mr. Redden to send it to me and I send it out to the group? What would you prefer?
I'm gonna try to send it to you now.
Okay.
Let me make this a little bit smaller. And
I got it.
All right, you got it.
Yeah, I got it. Thanks so much.
Let me correct that. Let me correct that last part. I was trying to type too fast. At mstate.edu. But yes, we had a lot of fun doing this project, and I also gave my 4-Hers and their parents a 2-page little cheat sheet that tells them how to grow the garden, and make step by step how to dig the hole, how far apart, how deep to plant the seed, little step by step tool that we use for our kids, because a lot of them had never planted, never grown anything before, and their parents hadn't either. So we try to make it very educational for the parents and grandparents, and just gave it to them step by step. So that helped out a lot as well. And
this whole program was virtual?
Yes, ma'am, because we could not meet with our 4-Hers in person. Mississippi State would not allow us to do so. So that was a way for us to keep active with our 4-Hers. And we got a lot of good publicity about it. CJ was on Mississippi State's Instagram page, and like 10,000 people saw it, and sent us messages and wished us well on the program we were doing with our youth here in Knoxville County, wishing that they could do those type programs in their county or trying to replicate it. So it was just a great experience for me personally. It was.
That's awesome. And you had so many. You had 50 youth. That's a lot of youth for a gardening program.
Yes, ma'am. But like I said, we had the support of our parents and our volunteers and our community that donated most of the supplies for us to use like that. So it was complete community buy-in on it.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you for joining us today, Mr. Coleman, and being a speaker. Thank you so much. We appreciate all you do.
Thank you guys for having me.
And any other questions? Any other questions for Mr. Coleman? Nope. Well, if you don't have any other questions, we appreciate your time. We thank you for participating in today's virtual office hours. And today's recording should be available by Friday on our YouTube channel, and I'll make sure I'll send that out to everyone if you want to share it with anyone or view it. And also I'd like to acknowledge Sierra. She's our intern, and she helped put today's virtual office hours together, and she'll also be putting together one for August. So if you have any ideas or if you want to be a speaker, just shoot me an email and I'll connect you with Sierra. All right, thank you. You have a good day.
Thank you. Oh, did Stephanie jump off? I had a question for her.
Yeah, I think she did.
She did.
Shucks.
I'll email her.
I'll give her a call. Thanks.
Okay.
Take care.